I never thought I'd be sitting in a Manhattan lawyer's office, staring at mahogany walls and expensive artwork that cost more than my entire year's rent. But there I was, Lily Chun, 22 years old, student loans crushing me, working part-time at a bookstore just to afford ramen dinners, waiting to hear what my billionaire grandfather left me in his will. Probably nothing, I told myself. Maybe a watch. Maybe $10,000 if I was lucky. My grandfather, Marcus Chun, had built Chun Industries from the ground up, a tech empire worth billions. But I barely knew him. My mother Rachel had a falling out with him when I was 5, and we've been living paycheck to paycheck in Queens ever since. She worked as a nurse, pulling double shifts, and I'd grown up believing that Marcus had chosen his money over his family, that he'd abandoned us. So when Mr. Patterson, the estate lawyer, called me in for the will reading, I assumed it was a formality, a courtesy invitation. I was wrong. The office was packed. My father David, Marcus's son, was there with his new wife Victoria. I hadn't seen David in over a decade. He divorced my mother when I was 5 and disappeared from my life completely. Seeing him now, smiling at me like we'd been close all along, made my stomach turn. My mother Rachel sat across the room, her face pale, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. Marcus's younger brother William was there too, along with various cousins, business associates, all of them dressed in expensive suits and designer dresses. Everyone looked tense, expectant, like wolves circling prey. Mr. Patterson adjusted his glasses and began reading the will. I, Marcus Chun, being of sound mind and body, do hereby leave my entire estate, valued at approximately $5 billion, including Chun Industries, all properties, investments, and assets, to my granddaughter, Lily Chun. The room exploded. I couldn't breathe. $5 billion. The entire estate. Not divided. Not in a trust. All of it. To me. David shot to his feet, his face red. That's impossible. My father wouldn't. Victoria grabbed his arm, but her eyes were calculating, already adjusting to the new reality. William's jaw clenched, his fists balling at his sides. And my mother, Rachel, just stared at me, her expression unreadable. Before I could even process what was happening, David rushed forward, Victoria beside him, both of them suddenly all smiles. Sweetheart. David's voice was warm, familiar, like he hadn't ignored me for 17 years. This is wonderful news. Of course, managing a $5 billion estate is incredibly complex. Your mother and I can put aside our differences to help you through this. Rachel stood, her voice soft, concerned. Lily! Honey, this is overwhelming. Let me help you navigate this. I'm still your mother. You need family right now. Victoria chimed in, her smile sharp. We should discuss investment strategies immediately. Family obligations. Tax implications. You'll need a team, darling, and who better than your own parents? I felt dizzy. These people, who'd been absent, distant, indifferent my entire life, were suddenly treating me like I was precious. Like I mattered, because now I had money. Mr. Patterson cleared his throat, cutting through the noise. There's a second page to the will, he said calmly. A set of conditions that Miss Chun must meet before she can access the inheritance. The room went silent. David's smile faltered. Rachel's face went white. Mr. Patterson looked at me, his expression neutral but his eyes kind. Shall I continue reading? Mr. Patterson's voice was steady as he read the conditions, but every word felt like a hammer striking glass. Condition 1. I had to live in Marcus's penthouse for 1 full year. Alone. No cohabitants except approved staff. Condition 2. I had to work directly at Chun Industries for that year, starting as an intern, learning every division from the ground up. Condition 3. I couldn't marry or become engaged during the year. Condition 4. I had to attend mandatory therapy sessions twice a week with a specific therapist Marcus had already arranged and paid for, Dr. Sarah Morrison. Condition 5. I couldn't give any money or assets to family members during the probationary year. Not a single dollar. Condition 6. At the end of the year, I had to write a personal essay explaining what I'd learned about wealth, family, and myself. If I failed any condition, the entire estate would go to a charitable foundation Marcus had established. The room erupted again, but this time the anger was raw, unfiltered. This is absurd. David shouted. My father was clearly not in his right mind. He was 79 years old on medication. Marcus was in medically proven cognitive health, Mr. Patterson interrupted calmly. He had full cognitive evaluations done by 3 independent doctors in the 6 months before his death. All confirmed his mental competency. The will is legally ironclad. William leaned forward, his voice cold. We'll contest this. No court will uphold such restrictive, manipulative conditions. The conditions are well within legal parameters, Mr. Patterson said. And I assure you any contest will fail. Victoria's smile returned, but it was forced now, desperate. Well, this is actually wonderful. A year of learning and growth. Lily, darling, you'll need guidance. David should obviously be on the Chun Industries board during this time to help you navigate. Marcus's will specifically states that David Chun is to have no involvement in company operations during the probationary year, Mr. Patterson said. In fact, he's explicitly barred from the Chun Industries building. David's face went purple. Barred? From my own father's company. It's not your company, Mr. Chun. It never was. Rachel stood, her voice shaking. Lily can't live alone in some massive penthouse. She's 22 years old. She'll need her mother. Surely the will allows. No cohabitants except approved staff, Mr. Patterson repeated. Mrs. Chun, you are not approved staff. The reality sank in slowly, like cold water filling my lungs. I was going to be isolated, alone in a massive penthouse, working at a company where everyone would resent me, pressured from all sides by people who suddenly cared about me only because of money. And I had no idea why Marcus had structured it this way. The meeting dissolved into chaos. David and William huddled with their lawyers, already strategizing. Victoria pulled out her phone, probably calling financial advisors. Rachel approached me, her eyes wet with tears. Lily, please, she whispered. Don't shut me out. I know this is confusing, but I'm still your mother. I love you. I wanted to believe her. But something in her voice felt rehearsed, calculated. As everyone filed out, Mr. Patterson approached me quietly. Miss Chun, a moment, please. When the room was empty, he handed me a sealed envelope. It was thick, heavy, the paper expensive. Your grandfather asked me to give you this privately, he said. He said to read it when you're alone, and to trust no one, especially not family, until you understand why he structured the will this way. My hands trembled as I took the envelope. Mr. Patterson, what's going on? Why would he do this? His expression softened. Your grandfather was many things, Miss Chun, but he was never cruel without reason. Read the letter. Everything will make sense. I left the office in a daze, clutching the envelope like a lifeline. That night, alone in my tiny Queens apartment, my last night before moving into the penthouse, I finally opened it, and everything I thought I knew about my family shattered. The letter was 10 pages long, handwritten in Marcus's precise script, and every word felt like a wound reopening. My dear Lily, if you're reading this, then I'm gone, and your parents are undoubtedly circling like sharks. I'm sorry for putting you through this, but there's no other way to protect you and give you the truth. My hands shook as I read. He started with David. My father, Marcus's son, had been embezzling from Chun Industries for over 20 years. It started small, just a few thousand here and there, easy to hide in a company generating billions. But over time, David got bolder. $50 million, Marcus estimated. Stolen over 2 decades. Marcus discovered it 5 years ago during an internal audit. Confronted David directly. David's response. He claimed he deserved it. That Marcus was hoarding wealth while his own son struggled. That the money was rightfully his as the founder's child. But the truth was darker. David had a gambling addiction. He owed money to dangerous people. The stolen money wasn't funding a modest lifestyle. It was feeding casinos, underground poker games, debts that kept multiplying. Victoria knew. She enabled it. Together, they lived in a Hamptons estate purchased with stolen money, throwing parties, buying cars, maintaining an illusion of wealth they hadn't earned. Marcus gave David one chance: enter rehab, pay back what he'd stolen, step away from the company. David refused. He threatened to go public with family secrets, to destroy Chun Industries' reputation, to drag Marcus's name through the mud. So Marcus quietly removed David from all company operations. paid off his gambling debts to protect the family name, and began planning for succession, knowing his son could never be trusted with the empire he'd built. But the letter didn't stop there. It turned to Rachel, my mother. Rachel married David specifically for money, Lily. I'm sorry to tell you this, but you need to know. When their marriage fell apart and David's addiction worsened, Rachel saw an opportunity. She tried to blackmail me. She threatened to take you and disappear, to make sure I'd never see my granddaughter again, unless I paid her $10 million. I felt sick. I refused. I told her that using a child as leverage was unforgivable. That's when she cut all contact. That's when she started telling you I'd chosen money over family. The truth hit me like a physical blow. All those years, my mother had painted Marcus as the villain, as the cold, heartless billionaire who cared more about his empire than his granddaughter. But Marcus had been protecting me. I've been sending money for your education, Lily. A trust fund managed by Mr. Patterson. It paid for your NYU tuition without Rachel knowing where it came from. I wanted to make sure you had opportunities, even if your mother tried to keep us apart. Tears blurred my vision. Your parents are both toxic, Lily. David is a thief and an addict. Rachel is a manipulator who sees you as a meal ticket. Neither of them has your best interests at heart. That's why I've structured the will this way, to force them to reveal themselves, to give you a year to learn, grow, and become strong enough to see through their lies. I sat there in my tiny apartment, the letter trembling in my hands, and felt my entire world collapse. Everything I'd believed about my family was a lie. The grandmother who'd supposedly abandoned me had been fighting for me all along. The parents who were suddenly so interested in my well-being were predators, circling fresh prey. But the letter wasn't finished. The final paragraph made my blood run cold. There's one more thing you need to know. The reason I'm leaving everything to you instead of to charity or other family members. There's a secret about your birth, about who you really are, that changes everything. Dr. Morrison has a second sealed letter explaining this. You'll receive it after your first therapy session. I'm sorry, Lily, for all of it, but you need to understand the full truth before you can move forward. Trust Dr. Morrison. Trust Mr. Patterson. And trust yourself. You're stronger than they ever let you believe. With love, Grandfather Marcus. I couldn't sleep that night. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, my mind racing. A secret about my birth. About who I really am. What could possibly be worse than what I'd already learned? 3 days later, I moved into the penthouse, 6,000 square feet of marble and glass overlooking Central Park. Staff who called me Miss Chun with barely concealed judgment. Silence so thick it felt suffocating. And on my 4th day, I had my first mandatory therapy session with Dr. Sarah Morrison. She was in her 60s, with kind eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. She didn't waste time. The moment I sat down, she handed me a second sealed envelope. Marcus wanted you to have this after meeting me, she said quietly. After seeing that I'm here to help you, not judge you. My hands trembled as I opened it, and the truth inside destroyed everything I thought I knew about myself. The second letter was shorter, but every word felt like a knife. Lily, David is not your biological father. I stopped breathing. When Rachel and David were married, Rachel had a brief affair with a colleague at the hospital where she worked. She got pregnant with you during this affair but told David you were his to save her marriage and financial security. David believed her. For years, he believed you were his daughter. Until you were 5 years old. During the divorce proceedings, David demanded a paternity test. That's when he learned the truth. That's when he discovered you weren't his child. He's resented you ever since. That's why he disappeared from your life. He wanted nothing to do with another man's child. My vision blurred. I could barely read the next lines. Rachel never told you because she was ashamed. Afraid of losing you. Afraid of losing access to the Chin family wealth. But I knew Lily. I paid for a private DNA test when you were 7. I needed to know the truth before planning my estate. The results confirmed you're not biologically a Chin. Everything I thought I knew about my identity, my name, my heritage, my place in the world, crumbled to dust. I wasn't a Chin. I was the product of an affair. A secret. A lie. But Marcus's letter continued. Here's what matters, Lily. Biology doesn't make family. You've been my granddaughter since the day you were born because I chose you to be. David rejected you when he learned the truth. Rachel used you. But I saw who you really are. Brilliant, kind, resilient despite everything. That's why I'm leaving you everything. Not because of blood, but because you're the only person in this family who deserves it. You're the only one who won't be corrupted by it. I looked up at Dr. Morrison, tears streaming down my face. He knew, I whispered. He knew I wasn't his biological granddaughter, and he left me everything anyway. Dr. Morrison nodded gently. Marcus wanted you to understand something crucial. Your parents will use this secret as a weapon. David will claim you're not entitled to the estate because you're not really a Chun. Rachel will try to guilt you into sharing the money because she protected you from this truth. But neither argument is valid, she continued. Legally or morally. The will is clear. Marcus made his choice with full knowledge of your paternity. I felt like I was drowning. Who am I, then? If I'm not a Chun. You're Lily, Dr. Morrison said firmly. You're the young woman Marcus believed in. The person he trusted with his legacy. That doesn't change because of biology. I wanted to believe her, but everything felt like it was slipping away. Dr. Morrison leaned forward, her expression shifting from comforting to serious. There's something else you need to know, she said quietly. Something Marcus didn't know when he wrote that letter. My heart stopped. I did some research when Marcus hired me. I wanted to understand your family dynamics fully, and in doing so I discovered something. She pulled out a file. I found your biological father. The room spun. His name is James Morrison. He was a cardiac surgeon at the same hospital where your mother worked 23 years ago. James Morrison. The same last name as Dr. Sarah Morrison. He's my younger brother, she said softly. The revelation hit me like a physical blow. Your biological father is my brother, Dr. Morrison repeated. I didn't know about you until Marcus hired me and explained the situation. When I confronted James, he admitted everything. He had a brief affair with Rachel. She told him she was on birth control. When she got pregnant, she ghosted him completely, blocked his number, transferred to a different department. He didn't know you existed until I told him 2 months ago. My mind reeled. Where is he now? He wants to meet you, but only if you want to. He's remarried. He has 2 other children, your half-siblings. He's built a good life, but he's devastated that he missed your entire childhood. I couldn't speak. Dr. Morrison's expression hardened. But that's not the worst part, Lily. She opened the file wider. I did some digging into Rachel's history, and what I found, what Marcus never knew, is that your entire existence was part of a conspiracy. Dr. Morrison spread documents across her desk. Phone records, financial statements, witness testimonies. Rachel didn't ghost James by accident, she said. David knew about the affair. One of Rachel's co-workers told him. I felt cold. He knew she was pregnant with another man's child. He knew. And instead of divorcing her immediately, he saw an opportunity. Dr. Morrison pulled out a photograph, David and Rachel, sitting in a restaurant, dated 23 years ago, just months before I was born. David convinced Rachel to stay married, to pass you off as his biological child. In exchange, they both have access to Marcus's money. It was a transaction, Lily. They planned you. The words didn't make sense. Couldn't make sense. They planned me. Rachel was supposed to be the perfect daughter-in-law. You were supposed to be the beloved Chun granddaughter who would inherit everything. And David would control it all through you, as your father. It was a long-term con. I couldn't breathe. It worked for 5 years, Dr. Morrison continued, until David's gambling addiction got so bad that Marcus started asking questions. That's when David demanded the paternity test. Not because he suspected you weren't his, but because he wanted an excuse to leave the marriage without looking like the villain. He knew the test would prove you weren't his. He could play the victim, the betrayed husband. Every memory I had of my childhood reframed itself. Every moment of feeling unwanted by David. Every time he looked at me with cold indifference. He'd known all along. Rachel went along with it, Dr. Morrison said. She got child support. She got to play the role of struggling single mother. And she got to keep you close, knowing that eventually, when Marcus died, you'd inherit. She was waiting, I whispered. All these years, she was just waiting. And when the paternity came out during the divorce, Rachel tried to blackmail Marcus. Threatened to take you away if he didn't pay her $10 million. Marcus refused. That's when she cut contact and started poisoning you against him. The conspiracy was so calculated, so cold, it made me sick. But Marcus saw through it, Dr. Morrison said. He cut David off, isolated Rachel, and spent the next 17 years protecting you from afar while planning this inheritance. She gestured to the will conditions, the therapy requirement, the year of isolation, the no contact with family clause. It's all designed to give you space to discover who you are without their manipulation. I felt tears burning my eyes. He knew they'd come after me. He knew exactly what they'd do, and he gave you every tool you'd need to fight back. Dr. Morrison closed the file. James wants to meet you, Lily. When you're ready. No pressure. No expectations. He just wants a chance to know his daughter. I thought about it. A biological father I'd never met. Half-siblings I didn't know existed. Does he want money? I asked quietly. He doesn't know about the inheritance, Dr. Morrison said. I haven't told him. He's a successful surgeon. He doesn't need money. He just wants to know you. It was the opposite of David and Rachel's constant demands. I'll think about it, I said. Dr. Morrison nodded. Then her expression grew darker. There's one more thing you need to know. She pulled out phone records, recent ones, dated just weeks ago. David and Rachel have been in contact. My blood ran cold. They've been talking regularly, coordinating. And your Uncle William is involved too. She spread the records out. Call logs, text messages, emails. They're planning something, Lily. They're going to try to break the will's conditions, to force you to fail so the entire estate goes to the charitable foundation, which William is on the board of and can access funds from. I stared at the evidence, my mind racing. They're working together, I whispered. They're coordinating a full attack. David will challenge your legitimacy publicly. Rachel will manipulate you emotionally. William will file legal challenges. Victoria will use social media to create public pressure. They're coming at you from every angle. Dr. Morrison looked me in the eye. You're not just fighting for an inheritance, Lily. You're fighting against a coordinated conspiracy from people who've been scheming for decades. She leaned back, letting the weight of it settle. The question is, are you ready to fight back? I thought about Marcus, about the grandfather who'd protected me when no one else would, who'd seen me as worthy even when he learned I wasn't his blood. I thought about the year ahead, the isolation, the pressure, the attacks, and I thought about the $5 billion, not as wealth, but as a weapon they tried to use against me. Yes, I said quietly. I'm ready. Dr. Morrison smiled. Good, because the attacks start tomorrow. And she was right. The attacks came exactly as Dr. Morrison predicted, but knowing they were coming didn't make them easier to endure. David showed up at Chun Industries 3 weeks into my probationary year. Security tried to stop him, but he pushed past them into the main lobby, shouting about betrayal and justice while employees filmed on their phones. This company belongs to the Chun family, he screamed. Not some bastard child who has no right to the name. Security escorted him out, but the damage was done. The videos went viral within hours. Then came the press leak. Billionaire's heir, not actually his blood relative, screamed the headline in the New York Post. The article detailed my paternity, painting me as an imposter who'd manipulated a dying old man into leaving me his fortune. The tabloids ran with it. Every day a new story, every headline more vicious than the last. I stopped reading them after the first week. Rachel took a different approach. She went straight for my heart. She called me sobbing, claiming she'd been diagnosed with cancer. Stage 3, aggressive, needing immediate treatment. She needed $500,000 for experimental therapy. Please, Lily, she begged. I know I haven't been perfect, but I'm still your mother. I'm dying. For a moment, I almost believed her. Almost broke the will's condition against giving money to family. But Dr. Morrison helped me verify Rachel's medical records. She was perfectly healthy. The cancer diagnosis was fabricated. When I confronted her, Rachel didn't even apologize. She just hung up and blocked my number. Uncle William filed a lawsuit claiming Marcus had been unduly influenced by Dr. Morrison, alleging that she'd manipulated a vulnerable old man to favor her brother's illegitimate child. The lawsuit was frivolous, but it generated headlines and kept the pressure constant. Victoria launched a social media campaign. She posted photos of David looking devastated, Videos of Rachel crying about being abandoned by her own daughter, carefully curated content designed to paint me as a cold, ungrateful heir who'd turned her back on family. The comments were brutal. She's not even a real Chun. Imagine stealing a dying man's fortune. She should be ashamed. I stopped checking social media too. But the worst part wasn't the public attacks. It was the isolation. I was working 60-hour weeks at Chun Industries, trying to learn a business I barely understood while executives, twice my age, resented my presence. I'd hear whispers in the hallways, see the judgment in their eyes. The penthouse felt like a prison. 6,000 square feet of marble and glass, staff who barely spoke to me, silence so oppressive I'd wake up at 3 a.m. convinced I'd stopped existing. I was drowning, and everyone was watching, waiting for me to break. 6 months in, I almost did. I sat alone in the penthouse one night, staring at my phone, at the blocked numbers and unanswered messages, at the headlines calling me a fraud and a thief, and I thought, maybe they're right. Maybe I don't deserve this. But then something unexpected happened. A letter arrived, not through Mr. Patterson or Dr. Morrison, but directly to the penthouse, hand-delivered. It was from James Morrison, my biological father. Dear Lily, I don't know if you want to hear from me. I understand if you don't. But Sarah, your therapist, my sister, said you're going through something difficult right now, and I wanted you to know you're not alone. I know I missed your entire childhood. I know I have no right to call myself your father. But I want you to know that if I'd known you existed, I would have been there. I would have fought for you. You don't owe me anything. But if you ever want to talk, to meet, to know where you came from, I'm here. No expectations. No pressure. Just an offer. The letter went on. He told me about his life, his wife, my half-siblings, Emma and Noah, 17 and 14. He talked about his work as a surgeon, his regrets, his hope that maybe, someday, I'd want to be part of his family. He asked for nothing. And for the first time in months, I didn't feel completely alone. I started responding to his letters. Short messages at first, testing the waters. But he was patient, genuine, asking about my life without prying, sharing his without demanding. And slowly, I built a support system. Dr. Morrison became more than a therapist. She became an anchor, someone who saw me as a person, not a dollar sign. Mr. Patterson revealed he'd been Marcus's best friend for 40 years, that he'd been protecting me legally since I was born, that he'd fight for me until his last breath. And the executives at Chun Industries, some of them, anyway, started to see that I wasn't just a privileged heir coasting on nepotism. I was working harder than anyone else, learning faster, making smart decisions. I was earning my place. But just as I started to feel stable, just as I started to believe I might actually make it through the year, David played his final card. He showed up at the penthouse with a court order, a psychiatric evaluation, and a lawyer. He was petitioning for conservatorship, claiming I was mentally unfit to manage the estate. The hearing was scheduled for the next day. The courtroom was packed, and I felt every pair of eyes on me as I walked in. David sat with his lawyers, Victoria beside him, both dressed in dark, somber colors like they were attending a funeral. William was there too, arms crossed, a slight smirk on his face. Rachel sat in the back row, dabbing her eyes with a tissue, even though I knew there were no tears. The press filled the remaining seats, cameras banned from the courtroom, but reporters ready to pounce the moment we stepped outside. This was their endgame. If David could convince the judge I was mentally unfit, overwhelmed by the pressure, isolated, manipulated by Dr. Morrison, he'd become conservator of the estate. He'd control everything for my protection, and I'd lose everything Marcus had tried to give me. David's lawyer stood first, a polished man in an expensive suit who spoke with practiced sympathy. Your Honor, we're here today out of concern for Ms. Chen's well-being. My client, David Chen, is a loving father who's watched his daughter suffer under the extreme psychological burden of managing a $5 billion estate at just 22 years old. I gripped the armrest of my chair, forcing myself to stay calm. The will's conditions, the lawyer continued, are cruel and unusual. Miss Chen has been isolated from her family, forced to live alone in a massive penthouse, required to work grueling hours at a company she knows nothing about, while simultaneously being attacked in the press. This is not normal. This is psychological torture. He gestured to a psychiatrist sitting in the gallery, a man I'd never met, who'd never spoken to me, but who was apparently ready to testify about my mental state. Dr. Richard Caldwell has reviewed Miss Chen's circumstances and is prepared to testify that these conditions constitute undue psychological stress that renders Miss Chen unable to make sound decisions regarding the estate. David took the stand first. He spoke with perfect, calculated emotion, concern bleeding into every word. "I know my relationship with Lily has been complicated," he said, his voice breaking slightly. "I made mistakes. I wasn't there for her when she was young. But I'm here now, and I can see she's drowning. She won't talk to me, won't let me help. She's isolated, paranoid." "Objection," Mr. Patterson said calmly. "Speculation." Sustained. David adjusted. "What I mean is, I'm worried about her. Any parent would be. The will's conditions are destroying her mental health, and I just want to protect her." Rachel testified next, playing the concerned mother beautifully. "Lily's always been fragile," she said, voice trembling. "Even as a child, she struggled with stress. This inheritance, it's too much for her. She needs support. She needs family. But the will won't let us near her, and I'm terrified of what might happen." It was a masterclass in manipulation. But then Dr. Caldwell, the psychiatrist David had brought, took the stand. He'd never met me, never spoken to me, but he'd reviewed my circumstances and concluded I was suffering from extreme stress, isolation-induced anxiety, and possible symptoms of being unduly influenced by Dr. Morrison. "In my professional opinion," he said, "Miss Chun is not in a psychological state to manage such a significant estate. The will's conditions have created a perfect storm of vulnerability that makes her susceptible to manipulation." David's lawyer rested their case. And then it was our turn. Mr. Patterson called me to the stand first. I was terrified. My hands shook as I swore the oath. But I'd practiced this with Dr. Morrison. I knew what to say. David's lawyer tried to rattle me immediately. "Miss Chen, isn't it true that you've had no contact with your family for 6 months?" "That's correct," I said calmly. "The will's conditions prevent me from giving money to family members during the probationary year. My parents have only attempted contact to demand money or create emotional pressure." "Isn't it true that you're living alone in a 6,000 square foot penthouse, isolated from friends and family?" "I'm living in my grandfather's penthouse as required by the will. I'm not isolated. I'm building my own support system. I have regular therapy, colleagues at Chun Industries, and relationships with people who care about me as a person, not as a paycheck." "And isn't it true that you've been under extreme stress, working 60-hour weeks while being attacked in the press?" "I've been under pressure, yes. But I'm managing it. I'm thriving, actually. Thriving." He raised an eyebrow. "You call this thriving?" "Yes," I said firmly. "I've learned more about business in 6 months than most people learn in years. I've increased Chun Industries' value by 8% through strategic decisions I advocated for. I've built genuine relationships. I've discovered who I am outside of my parents' manipulation. That's thriving." Mr. Patterson stood, introducing documentation. Work evaluations from Chun Industries, every one of them exemplary. Letters from executives praising my initiative, my work ethic, my strategic thinking. Financial records showing I hadn't just maintained the company's value, I'd grown it. Then Dr. Morrison took the stand. She spoke about our twice-weekly therapy sessions, about my mental health, which was stable, improving, and remarkably resilient given the circumstances. "Miss Chun is one of the strongest young women I've ever worked with," Dr. Morrison said. "She's been under attack from every angle, and instead of crumbling, she's grown. She's not being manipulated. She's learning to see manipulation for what it is and reject it." David's lawyer tried to discredit her. "Isn't it true, Dr. Morrison, that your brother is Ms. Chen's biological father? That you have a financial interest in her success?" "My brother is her biological father, yes. But I was hired by Marcus Chun before I knew about that connection. And I have no financial interest in the estate whatsoever. My only interest is in Lily's well-being." Then Mr. Patterson played his trump card. "Your Honor, I'd like to introduce evidence of a conspiracy." He spread documents across the defense table. Phone records showing David, Rachel, and William coordinating their attacks. text messages discussing strategy, timing, how to create maximum pressure. The fabricated medical records Rachel had used to try to extract money. Financial forensics, showing David had set up shell companies to continue embezzling from Chun Industries. He'd assumed Marcus's death meant oversight would lapse. Video footage of William offering bribes to Chun Industries board members, trying to get them to vote against me. The judge's expression shifted from neutral to shocked to angry. "Mr. Chun," the judge said, her voice cold, "are you aware that conspiracy to defraud an estate is a federal crime?" David's face went white. His lawyer tried to object, to claim the evidence was inadmissible, but Mr. Patterson had done everything by the book. "Your Honor," Mr. Patterson said calmly, "not only is Ms. Chin clearly competent to manage the estate, but the petitioners have demonstrated a coordinated pattern of fraud, manipulation, and criminal conspiracy. This conservatorship petition is not about protecting Ms. Chun, it's about stealing from her." The judge looked at David with open disgust. "Mr. Chun, not only is this petition dismissed, but I'm referring this case to the district attorney for investigation into fraud and embezzlement. I'm also issuing a restraining order barring you from contacting Ms. Lily Chun." David exploded. "This is insane. That money should be mine. My father was a senile old fool who..." "Bailiff, remove Mr. Chun from my courtroom." Security grabbed David as he screamed about injustice, about theft, revealing his true nature for everyone to see. Rachel tried to approach me as we left, but I simply looked at her. "I know about the cancer lie. I know about the conspiracy. I know you've been using me my entire life," I said quietly. "We're done." She opened her mouth to respond, but no words came out. I walked out of the courtroom with Mr. Patterson and Dr. Morrison, leaving my parents behind. 6 months later, I successfully completed the probationary year. I wrote my essay, a raw, honest account of learning that family isn't biology or obligation, but choice and integrity. That wealth doesn't corrupt, it reveals. That the people who claim to love you while demanding things from you don't actually love you at all. The estate became mine. All $5 billion. Chun Industries. Everything. David was under federal investigation for embezzlement. Rachel had disappeared, possibly to avoid prosecution for fraud. William lost his board position on Marcus's charitable foundation. And me. I was thriving. I met James and my half-siblings. Emma and Noah welcomed me with open arms, no expectations, just genuine warmth. We built a relationship slowly, carefully, and it felt real in a way my relationship with David never had. I kept Dr. Morrison as my therapist, even though it was no longer mandatory. She'd become family. I promoted the executives at Chun Industries who'd supported me and fired the ones who'd undermined me. And I used part of the fortune to fund education programs for kids from broken homes, kids like me, who needed someone to believe in them. One evening, I stood in Marcus's study, now mine, looking at a photo of him. There was one final letter I'd found in his desk, dated the week before he died. "You'll be angry with me for the tests, the isolation, the pressure. But I needed you to see that you're stronger than they ever let you believe. You're not a victim of their schemes. You're a survivor who became a leader. The money is yours because you earned it by being the one person in this family with integrity. I'm proud of you, Lily. Not because you're a Chin by blood, but because you're a Chin by choice. And that matters more." I folded the letter carefully, placed it back in the desk, and smiled. Marcus had given me more than money. He'd given me the truth, the space to grow, the chance to become who I was meant to be. And I'd proven him right. My parents had tried to control me with money, manipulation, and lies. I took their weapons and built a life they'd never understand. Because the best revenge isn't living well. It's living authentically. And I finally knew who I was.